Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
If you've already seen or heard my commentary on the Parsha, you know that I often think of this week's Parsha as the one with the calendar. Especially since I'm a Torah reader, I'm very familiar with the selections from Parshat Pinchas that are read as maftir on holidays and as the Torah reading for Rosh Chodesh throughout the year. Yet, when I studied the Parsha this year, I was drawn to the other parts of its text, which tell the story of the Israelite people at a pivotal moment in their journey from Egypt towards the Promised Land. In Parshat Pinchas, we read the story of 3 generations of a growing family. We read about the elders who are stepping back from leadership or who are already no longer alive. We read about their children who are stepping fully into community leadership for the first time. And then we read about their children, the grandchildren, who are taking their first actions to speak out in their community. And, of course, some of these young people do so more gracefully than others. Parshat Pinchas tells the story of the Israelites' first generational shift, as the founding leaders who took us out of slavery in Egypt finally hand off responsibility to the next generation. In the past, I've had the opportunity to serve 2 different organizations that had recently undergone or were currently undergoing their first generational shift. The founders had led the organization to decades of success, and now they had a new responsibility to step back and let someone else lead. As I watched these shifts, I noticed that the responsibility of stepping back, especially as we get older, is not something that comes easily to everyone. There's a tremendous amount of emotion in recognizing that it's someone else's turn, that our own time is coming to an end. It can bring back a flood of memories of celebrations and accomplishments, of mistakes and of regrets. Over time, I came to understand that the choices elders made when they stepped back certainly impacted the next generation, and they also made a powerful statement about their own values and their own priorities. Their choices could show a sense of completion and gratitude, or a sense of holding back, of holding on, of not being ready to trust in the future. But either way, generational shift is inevitable. The young people will eventually take over. We see this in our Parsha, first with Eleazar, the son of Aaron, who has taken on the role of high priest now that Aaron is no longer alive. In this Parsha, God speaks to Eleazar directly for the first time, acknowledging him as a leader and giving him his first task to take a census of the Israelites. Now, taking a census might not be the most exciting of tasks, but as a tool for understanding the community, it's essential. This is the second census that appears in the book of Bamidbar, following up from the census that appears in the very first Parsha of the book of Bamidbar. In that first census, each of the 12 tribes is listed, and one leader for each of these 12 tribes is identified, 12 leaders in all. When we reach the second census in our Parsha this week, the names of those 12 leaders seem long forgotten. Each of the 12 tribes has expanded into a collection of families. Comparing the 2 lists of names side by side, it is vividly clear. The family names are the same, but the names of the individuals are completely different. The act of passing on leadership has kept the Israelite community together. When Eleazar takes the census, he affirms that even though this is not the same group of people, this is absolutely the same family it's always been. Now, while Eleazar is taking on the honor and responsibility of leadership, a new generation of young people is already rising up, making requests and taking actions that push against the status quo. First, we have the 5 daughters of Tzlofchad, Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, who make an extraordinary request. They stand before Moses, Eleazar, and the whole community and ask to inherit their family's portion of the Holy Land, since their father has died without having any sons, and according to their custom, daughters were not eligible to inherit. But if they didn't inherit their family's portion, the family line would be lost. Moses listens to these 5 young women and brings their question to God. God responds both by granting their request and by giving a new instruction that any daughter or daughters in the same situation should also inherit to preserve the family line. If it seems strange to you, like it did to me, that their request was granted so quickly, our commentaries offer insight. Rashi explains that these 5 sisters are descendants of Joseph, son of our patriarch Jacob. Even though Joseph lived much of his life outside our Holy Land, he remained invested in it, committed to it, so much so that he asked for his bones to be buried there. The daughters of Tzlofchad shared that same connection and investment to the Holy Land as their ancestor Joseph, and this made their request a worthy one. Now, the Midrash in Bamidbar Rabbah explains a little bit differently, that the generation of elders who had been freed from slavery in Egypt complained bitterly and repeatedly about their freedom as they journeyed toward our Holy Land, which we've been reading about for weeks now. The daughters of Tzlofchad represented a new and different generation of people who were actually eager to arrive in the Holy Land, who wanted to settle there and raise their families there. This eagerness is exactly what we want to see. Of course, their request should be granted. In our Parsha, the daughters of Tzlofchad demonstrate that sometimes young people have strange ideas about how to do things, but sometimes these strange ideas are actually brilliant innovations. On a different note, we have another young person who is very much recognized in this Parsha, and he takes bold action for change. This is Pinchas, the son of the new high priest Eleazar. He's rewarded in this week's Parsha for a zealous yet questionable action that he took actually at the end of last week's Parsha, when some of the Israelite men had been socializing with some of the Moabite women. One thing led to another, and soon enough, the Israelite men were participating in the Moabites' offerings to their God. So when God saw this happen, in anger, God told Moses to have the ringleaders of this mischief publicly impaled. Just as Moses was relaying this instruction to the assembly, an Israelite man came toward them with a Midianite woman. Quick on his feet, Pinchas got up, took his spear, and stabbed the Israelite man and Midianite woman to death. Our Parsha this week picks up right after this bold act. God speaks to Moses saying, Pinchas has turned back my wrath as he has shown his zeal for me. Thus, I will grant him my pact of friendship, my brit shalom. So if this seems strange to you, as it did to me, our commentary offers an explanation bringing context to the words brit shalom. When we look closely at these verses in our Sefer Torah and our Torah scroll, we see that the Yud in Pinchas's name is written smaller relative to the other letters, and the Vav in the phrase brit shalom is written with a small break in its stem. This commentary teaches us that when we commit acts of violence, even when they are justified, the Yud in us, our Jewish essence and our connection to God, is diminished. And when we achieve peace by destroying our opponent, the peace we find is flawed and incomplete. In our Parsha, Pinchas demonstrates that our young people might not always act cautiously, yet still they can care about doing the right thing and can be the first to rise up and take action. While Pinchas and the daughters of Tzlofchad are standing up and making themselves very much known, while Eleazar continues to find his footing as the new high priest, the one remaining member of the eldest generation, Moses, reaches his time to finally let go of leadership. God commands Moses to ascend to the heights and gaze upon our holy land before his life comes to an end. Moses knows it's his turn to let go, to step back, to allow someone else to lead. And Moses speaks to God. With his characteristic humility, he makes a request. He says, "Let the Lord, source of the breath of all flesh, appoint someone over the community who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall take them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd." Midrash Tanchuma adds that what Moses was asking for was a leader who can relate to each and every person according to their own unique temperament, a leader who can lead all people, not just those that share their views. With characteristic courage and humility, Moses makes a choice to trust in the future of his people. Instead of holding on to his past, he seeks a successor who can care for the people, all of the people, in the best possible way. And as only Moses can, he makes his request earnestly and then humbly does what God commands him. When we reach moments in our lives when it's our time to hand over leadership, may we be like Moses, looking forward to the future and working to help the next generation succeed. When we step into leadership, may we be like Eleazar, taking on the tasks before us with dignity and diligence. And when we find ourselves to be the newest and youngest voices around, may we learn from Pinchas to be bold yet cautious, and may we learn from the daughters of Tzlofchad to stand up and speak out, that our extraordinary requests may yet be innovations for a new generation. Shabbat Shalom.